Well, welcome back to another Coffee and a Chat. I just wanted to share with you something that happened the other day that, really blessed me, okay? And I'm sorry if this starts getting jiggly. I've got one of my dogs is down at my feet and he seems a little restless, like he can't get comfortable. He keeps bumping everything. But anyway, this not only blessed me, but it really made me think about a few things. And you know how it is. I just want to share it with you. And yes, I know I look a mess because I've kind of been working today. So that's a good thing. Okay, so the other day, my Marvin had to go meet with this guy. And so we do a lot of things together. So I went with him. And so when we got there, this guy, comes into the room and he does that, the typical greeting, hey, how you guys doing? Good to see you. Hey, Angie, haven't seen you in a while type thing, and just, what's going on, what's new, and we're like, hey, everything's great and all, what's new with you? And he said to Marvin, he goes, you pray. And it was kind of like a statement, but kind of a question. And Marvin goes, do I pray? And he goes, yeah. And Marvin goes, oh, yeah, absolutely. And I go, we're a praying family. We have rooms in our home dedicated to prayer. And so he goes, I want you to pray for me. You just be praying for me. And so I said, is there, because you could tell there was like a heaviness with him. And I said, is there anything specific that you need prayer for? And he goes, okay, thanks a minute. And he goes, just pray for me. And we're like, okay. And then that was kind of, and then Marvin's like, you know what, I'll tell you what, before we leave today, I want to pray with you. We'll pray for you before we go home. And so he was like, okay, great. And I thought, So I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, first it was odd. I mean, this guy had my attention because I've met him many times, had many conversations with him. We've, he and Marvin and I have talked about all kinds of things. But he's never said or done anything that would make me think that this man believes in God, okay, or that God really holds a purpose in his life. So I found that interesting. In fact, there's been some things he's said before that, even more so made me think that, he might not really believe in the Lord. And so, I thought, well, that's interesting. But here he is asking for prayer. So something's going on. And at least he knows that, he must know that there's hope in God, or sometimes some people, when all else fails, they turn to God. I think that's with a lot of people. So anyway, so I thought, well, that is interesting. But then I thought too, how proud I am to be married to a man who lives his life and speaks with people in a way that allows them to know that he loves Jesus. And so when we were done talking to the guy when we left and we got in the car, I said, that was pretty, and we did pray or Marvin prayed with him before we left. And I've put him in my prayer journal and we're continuing to pray for him. But I said, Marvin, I go, that was pretty strange for one thing, don't you think? And he goes, yeah, that. He goes, wow, all the years that I've known him, he's never asked for prayer before. And, and there was some things that were said and some things we saw and all that kind of, I think gave us a little insight maybe into some of the things that might be going on. And, so anyway, I told Marvin, I go, when somebody knows, when they're looking for God and they know they can come to you, to try and find God, that is like the biggest compliment ever. And I just let him know again how much I love being married to a man who has that love relationship with the Lord. So, and Marvin is very much a praying man. In fact, after Marvin prayed for him, the guy took a deep breath and he goes, wow, I feel better already, and Marvin's like, well, that's how it is with God, and it just was really, really cool. And the last couple of days since that happened, I've thought even more about it, I've probably said this on here before, but the moment I knew that I had fallen in love with Marvin was when a particular time when he prayed. I'd heard him pray other times too, but this one particular night, Marvin prayed, and there was something about how when he starts his prayer, he often starts it with Father, okay? But there was just something about the way he said that just was so full of love and genuineness. And it's like I say, my heart kind of went whoop, and I knew I was a goner. But it was Marvin praying that really cinched it in that I knew I'd fallen for this guy and stuff. So anyway, so that's the blessing in all of it, is to be married to a man who walks with the Lord in such a way that his light shines before men, and they know that he loves the Lord. But the thing it's got me thinking about is, back in, I don't know, the 60s, 70s, in that time frame, bumper stickers, the buttons with political or religious statements on them, that was like a big thing. And in fact, my mom and dad used to make buttons and bumper stickers and things like that and sell them at like Saturday markets and stuff, because that was like the thing. And there was a lot of, little catchphrases and stuff. You still hear some of them today, like Christians aren't perfect, just forgiven was one of them. Oh. Okay, what do you see? There's no bad guy out there. It's good. Okay. No, the dog thing. Okay, hang on a second. There's nothing out there. That's across the street. It's okay. Sorry for that little interruption from Samson, but anyway, where were we? Oh, yes. So there was this one bumper sticker, and it made me think about this. And it says, if you were ever accused of being a Christian, would there be enough evidence to convict you? And, and I thought, praise God. Yeah, there's enough to convict Marvin. And I hope there's enough to convict me. Oh, yeah, there is definitely. Just go to the internet. I've blabbed it all out there. Ain't no doubt who I love. So, but what it got me to thinking is, there's always been an issue with different countries and stuff where being a Christian is a crime. I'll say is, because it still is in some places. And how people, there have been people that have been killed for their faith. And so, but we haven't really had a ton of that in America, and it's not been illegal to be a Christian. This is supposed to be a Christian nation. I don't think we are anymore. That does not seem to be where a lot of things, where our values lie anymore. But in the Bible, we know that in the prophecies, that as we get closer and closer to the return of Christ, and I mean the return of Christ, I'm not talking about the rapture, I'm talking about when he comes back to reign. So as time wraps up and this portion of life as we know it comes to an end, there is going to be a time when globally it is not going to be okay to be a Christian, and many people will be martyred for their faith. And that's what it really got me thinking about, is not just, is there enough evidence to convict me? Because I believe there is. And if there isn't, I'll give them the evidence. Because I am not ashamed of Jesus Christ. I am not ashamed of the gospel. And, but it comes down to that. Are you willing? My grandson was reading an article to me the other day saying, oh, you know, in this country it says that they just beheaded 8 people for being Christians. Now, I don't know if it's really true or not, you know, and that's why I told him, I go, there's so much stuff out there that, you know, it's hard to know what's real and what's true and what's not. You're okay. But that's the dog's okay. You're okay too, but, you know, I'm trying to tell him he's okay. I may have to redo this. I don't know. He's, you know. So anyway, I said, but there's 2 things. One is that we do need to understand this has always been happening, and it will continue to happen. And in fact, we're going to see more of it happening. So there's that. But then I said the other thing that you really have to ask yourself is, if you are faced with that, are you willing to give your life for your faith in Jesus Christ? And that's the part that I was really thinking about, you know, and I don't think anybody can really honestly answer that question until they're faced with it. I mean, what I can tell you is I believe that I am willing to, but I won't really know what I would do unless I'm faced with it. And I sure hope that I am willing to give it all for Jesus. Like I said, I believe I am, but I hope that's really true. You know, there's been things that I thought I could do, and then, you know, you get up there like jumping off a diving board into a very, very, very deep pool and thinking, yeah, I can do that. And then you get up to the edge of the diving board and you look down there and it's like, I don't think I can do this. And then backing up very carefully. Something I thought I was ready to do, and then when faced with it, I found I wasn't. I hope that I am at that place, that faced with such a thing, that I'll walk to the end of the board and gladly jump off, giving my all for Jesus. So it's had me thinking a lot about that this week, and I think that that is an important thing to think about, and an important question to ask yourself. So I just want to kind of share that with you and put that there and just tell you guys I love you, and I will talk to you again real soon. You take care. All right. Bye.